bringing on this is our second week of national champions. And last week we had Marcus Ginyard join us. This week, back in town with some of his teammates, George Lynch from the 93 squad. George, there's no way it's been 30 years since y'all cut the nets down, is it?
Well, if you look at my gray hair,
hey, at least you got
it's been 30 years.
At least you got it, man. It was my senior year at Carolina, too. Knew a little bit of a few of you guys. We can talk about that off the air. But what do you remember, like, when guys talk about college? I try to go back and think. 1993, I was a senior at Carolina. I remember they won the national championship. Like, what do you remember vividly from that year?
Man, I remember the type of work that we had to put in. To me, the 2 years before that, with Duke, going back to back, that was all I could remember as far as my motivation going into the season. Just being able to reflect on those feelings. I think we got ousted the previous year by Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could think about was, going out as a champion.
Mm-hmm.
So between going to classes, the 4 losses between Duke, Florida State, Wake Forest, and who was the 4th loss?
You tell me, because somebody's already asked.
Yeah,
4th loss.
Michigan.
In Hawaii.
Yeah, it was Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Just the type of commitment and sacrifice that group we had to put in. Everyone was counting us out or didn't have us up there with, I think they had Kentucky, Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking
Usual
about
suspects.
talking about the 5-5, and we didn't have the exciting players. We were like, look, to me, I felt all year we had the best coach in the country. I also felt that we were prepared and ready to match up against anyone that year and come out victorious. So it wasn't, it was just about us taking care of business.
Do you remember, I guess it was Midnight Madness at the time, and it was right around Halloween. And Heinrich Rodel got up and said, and I remember this vividly because I was there in the stands, and he said, this team could be so good it'll be scary, or something to that effect. And everybody thought, well, you mentioned it, lost to Ohio State. I think they had Jimmy Jackson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then the year before that, lost in the Final Four against Kansas.
Yep.
And then the year before that, you were on that team. Rick Fox hits a shot against Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and then lose to
We lost to Arkansas, I think.
Arkansas.
40 minutes of hell.
Yeah.
And so it sort of builds up to the point where you know it, your teammates know it, the national media doesn't know it. What was Dean Smith telling you guys?
Coach Smith always tried to reflect the pressure of being a Tar Heel, a Carolina basketball player, off the players. It was always about something else bigger than us playing a game that we all enjoy playing. So he always somehow, some way made it more about life off the court than it was on the court because he knew the pressure we were under.
When you think about that pressure, was there pressure? Was there pressure because Dean hadn't had that one since '82? Did you guys feel that? I know Dean did everything he could to.
We didn't talk about that. The pressure for me was watching Duke clip the banners and clip the nets 2 years in a row. And
so that burned in you guys.
Well, I know it burned in me. I don't know what my teammates were thinking, but my summer was, look, we also felt that the ACC was the best conference in the country.
Sure.
So if anybody was going to win it, that following year, it had to be an ACC team.
So I want to ask you a little bit. You talked about the things that you remember. Obviously, with you guys, again, it's hard for me to wrap my head around 30 years, but you guys had a lot of beloved personalities on that team in '93. What's something you want folks to remember about that squad and about, what you guys were? Is it something having to do with Coach Smith? Is it something having to do with the fact that y'all did wrestle the banner away from Durham? Is the fact that you guys were the unsung heroes and maybe the workman-like roster that rose above it all?
I think it was more, they talk about family.
Mm-hmm.
Duke say the brotherhood. Here in Chapel Hill, I know at least when I first stepped on campus, it was about family.
Mm-hmm.
The first day on campus, King Rice, Rick Fox took me on my tour of campus. That's all they preached. So when the guys came in, Hubert was already here. When everybody else came in, the Reese and Sullivan and Phelps, that class, Rozier, came in. It was about making sure that those guys felt the same family atmosphere. So by the time, a lot of kids don't go to school 4 years now, but we had been here for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about getting the job done. I know when I was recruited out of high school, I came to Carolina to graduate, go to Final Fours, and win a national championship. And I was on track with 2 of those 3. I didn't have my banner. So for me, and I made sure that all my teammates, we were on point to hang a banner my senior year.
So what's the difference in a really good team, maybe even a great team, and a national championship team? Is it work ethic? Is it buy-in? Is it chemistry? Is it all of those things? What was it for you guys that made you different from being real good Final Four caliber to clipping the nets? Because we're seeing that right now with this squad.
I think it's about the buy-in. It's about every day the preparation. We was just at practice and Coach Davis was telling the guys, preparation, it's about now get the best out of today's practice. And that's what it's about and then the other thing is you got to be healthy going down that stretch. Everyone has to be gelling, playing together. And then you have to believe with the guys in that locker room and the coaching staff, the game plan has to be executed. And the closer you get to the championship game, the less mistakes you have to make.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get to that Final Four, all 4 teams are playing at their best. Of course, they're healthy. They're clicking on all cylinders. And no matter who we played against that 93 year, we believe that the game plan that our coaching staff gave us, and if we executed it, we didn't have to worry about who was on the other side.
Mm-hmm. I've heard folks say, too, that when Coach Smith was coaching, it wasn't about y'all doing scouting reports. It was about y'all executing your game plan better than the other team was going to execute theirs, and that's how you won.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we believed in it. We were just talking at breakfast, Matt Winstrom and Salvador brought up the first game of the year. Well, when we was in Hawaii, he was like, man, we about to lose our first game. And Coach Smith came in the huddle and say, we about to win this game. And then Matt Winstrom and Scott Cherry was on the sideline, was like, does he know what he's talking about? We down 9 with 30 seconds. and they said Coach Smith made a believer out of them right there in that game. He made a believer out of me when we played Oklahoma in my freshman year. Mm-hmm. He drew up the play on both sides. This is what we're going to do. This is how they're going to react. And it happened to a T.
Wizardry.
All the way down to Rick Fox, I want you to ball fake. You're going to get a layup. He ball fake and shot it off the glass, but that was Rick Fox. He had to do it his way. And then going into my senior year, Cincinnati, overtime game, he told Brian Reese,
Don't dunk it.
don't dunk it.
And what happened?
Brian Reese dunked it. Now we got to play extra minutes. So, but those were the things that you have to believe in your preparation and trust in what the coaches are telling you. You have to trust that your teammates are going to come through for you. And that's Coach Davis has 18 players. So they have to believe in 1 through 18. And then 1 through 18 have to do their part. I think that was the key to the national championship team. Every guy knew what his responsibility was. And to the best of my knowledge, everyone carried out their responsibility.
So you talked about a guy a second ago who was old man on campus when you showed up, and that's the head man now, Hubert Davis. What was Hubert like as a teammate? Because, again, he was the older guy. You talked about the older guys like King Rice and Rick Fox showing you around. Hubert was one of those upperclassmen when you got here. What were those guys like, but more importantly, what was Hubert like then as a player?
The thing about it was everyone had their own personalities. And Coach Smith, later he told us, he said he likes to recruit kids. He wouldn't recruit 5 kids that had the same personality, same area, same background. So Hubert was, he was very religious. And he was kind of quiet, but he was like you could tell his mind was always the competitive side, because all the other guys that was on the team, I don't think he was a McDonald's All-American. I don't think he was highly recruited, but you couldn't tell once we got in practice. I mean, he was the best shooter on the team, 3-point shooter, and he could score at all levels. Like, Hubert could shoot the three. Rick could shoot the three, but not as consistent as Hubert. Nobody else. Hubert was probably the only player on the team my freshman and sophomore year that was shooting the 3-point shot until we got, Dante Calabre on the team. But he could get to the rim when he wanted to. It didn't look as athletic as everybody else, but when he wanted to dunk the ball, he could dunk it. When he wanted to shoot the 3, he could. He had a floater in the lane. He had all 3 levels where everybody else didn't have that to the game. And he was as competitive as anyone else on the team.
That is, talking about Hubert there, I think people have forgotten or maybe shortchanged how good he was at Carolina. I mean, he certainly showed it playing in the league for as long as he did. When you look at him, and then you mentioned Dante, and then Donald came in, what do you see in the newer guys or these guys? Caleb Love, R.J. Davis. Do you ever watch later teams, and God, we've got 29 versions of it. We're talking about 30 years ago. But do you see in the new guys or in the current team what you saw, the pieces at least, when you were playing? Are there comparisons there?
Well, when you ask a former player, we are those guys' toughest critics. And because I'm 30 years removed, I'm probably a little more old school. I got a son who plays at Myers Park, and I'm his toughest critic. And so when I watch our guys, sometimes I don't always see the sacrifice of, I know I can take this shot, but I'm gonna get a better shot for my teammate. So sometimes, and a lot of times, it's good and bad, because I like Love's confidence. But you wouldn't believe how many guys, former players on the group chat was like, man, if I had a chance to take 34 shots. So that was for Carolina players. And you can go back any generational guys, to see guys take 34 shots in a college game. It questions whether if you're playing for your team or you're playing for an individual. Now, I'm not in his practices and I'm not in the locker room. He might felt that he needed to take 34 shots. But sometimes, Baycott should have had 10 of those touches before you take 34 shots. But, we're hoping that these guys can get it together, because at the end of the day, if you don't win a national championship at Carolina, it's a disappointment. It's a disappointment. And that's the standard that we, as former players, hold the current guys. So, and I tell them when I see them, I say, look, man, we're about hanging banners. Mm-hmm. So, and then, nowadays, these young guys, they got so many people in their ear. Yeah. They dealing with the NIL. I mean, if I was here playing and we had NIL, it would be hard for me to focus on school and stand focused on the basketball court.
Sure. All right. Let me ask the follow up to the 30+ shots. What would Dean Smith? And I'm not banging on Caleb Love at all. Right. It is what it is, and I don't want people to take it that way.
Different game.
It is a different era. But what would Coach Smith do if George Lynch put up 25, 30 shots in one game? What would you be doing?
What would he pull you? I don't think I could have got enough offensive rebound to take 34 shots, because he did allow me. He said, George, if you get an offensive rebound, you can shoot it. And he said, I don't care where you get the offensive rebound from. So that was my incentive because I also knew that Donald needed his shots. Yeah. Brian Reese needed his shots. Derek needed his shots. So I was always kind of aware of what my teammates around me, if they were happy when the game was over, were they happy with their shot attempts?
It's an interesting. It has been interesting. Baycott said yesterday in media availability, telling Pete Nance to shoot more. You might as well shoot more. Everybody else is. And so it's just a different way. When you look at, I want to go back to that 93 team a little bit, because one of the games everybody talks about is the Florida State game, the Florida State comeback.
I was there.
It was the one game I did not go to. Y'all cost me a bathroom door. And Highland Hills Apartments, I'm sorry, I'll send a check. If y'all have forgotten, great. But in a game like that, I think it was, 21 points, 10 minutes left. You talked about Coach Smith telling you this is what's going to happen, and it did. Can you speak to how important it is to have not only confidence in yourself, but have another human being have that confidence in you to be able to perform?
It was a relief because even, after Carolina, leading up to Carolina, I played a lot of basketball, and I played for different coaches. And every coach has his own style. Some coaches are drivers and pushers, and you never can get it right. And Coach Smith had that balance of, we're going to keep working until we get it right, but I'm also going to keep encouraging you to play the right way, play within team concept. And if you do it my way, we'll be successful. And it's a lot. It takes a lot for a young kid, even the guys today, to trust in Coach Davis, to trust in everything he's telling them, and then trusting everything that everybody else been telling them, and just finding that balance. Because people don't know, my first year at Carolina, my uncle was telling me to shoot the ball. You need to get more shots. And Coach Smith telling me, you can be the best player on the floor without shooting the ball. So, and I came, and I was a high school All-American. I averaged 20-something points and 12 or 13 rebounds.
King of Roanoke.
Yeah. And Mr. Basketball in Virginia. And then you come and a coach say, you can be the best player on the floor for me and not shoot the ball. And for
what are you thinking?
18-year-old, how do you wrap your head around that?
Well, I'm like, I know one thing. I want to play more than I want to sit on the bench and cheer. So it was either listen to the Coach Smith, who's giving out the minutes. Well, Coach Guthers was giving out the minutes. But listen to these two guys and play, or listen to my uncle
and sit.
Thanks,
Unc. So I want to ask you, I think people forget you were a lottery pick and played an extensive NBA career. If I remember this correctly, last guy to wear the 34 for the Lakers before Shaq.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, your career in the NBA, I mean, you were such a versatile player. North Carolina has a guy that a lot of folks see similarities in you with Leaky Black.
Right.
Do you think Leaky has a future in the NBA with his skill set and his frame? And, you know, his shooting hasn't been the best, but it's been better this year. How do you think he translates to the next level?
I think we have a similar, and I had a conversation with Leaky last year. I said, Leaky, don't worry about scoring the basketball, because he was shooting and he was shooting and he was putting pressure on himself. You could just see it on his body. And I said, Leaky, trust me. You're the only guy on this team, this was last year's team, that can guard 1 through 5. And I said, if you give Coach Davis that trust that I can put Leaky on 1 through 5 if I need to stop, he got to have you out there.
Yep.
And then you're going to just, because you're on the court, a shot going to come your way. And if you continue to put the work in, they're going to fall. Because he was trying to prove to everybody he could shoot the three. And now, this year, he's making 3-point shots.
Looks so much more confident taking it, too.
Right. So, and he's going to be much more valuable. If he can defend 1 through 5 this year, make a timely bucket, whether it's a 3, mid-range, layup, they can get back to the national championship game. And then he's got to be willing to, I think he needs to be a little bit more vocal. He needs to be the guy, look, if it ain't going right and someone on that team, like Baycott said, everybody else shooting, they need someone to step up and say, listen, man, if it's to Love, if it's to Davis, if it's to Trimble, if it's to Pete Nash, look, you done took enough shots, or you need to take a shot. Someone has to be able to say that, and don't wait until the biggest game in the moment. You got to say it in practice. You got to say it in these games where there's not as much pressure. There's not the ACC tournament. There's not the, run in the NCAA. You can't wait till the last minute to say it. You got to be willing to say it when it doesn't matter. And that's in practice when Hubert got y'all playing situational and you trying to win a game.
And nobody's watching.
Right. Because then your teammates know it's coming from a good place. It's about winning. And I think as long as all those guys do what they do and it's about winning, good things will happen for this team.
It's a big day here in Chapel Hill. NC State coming to town, honoring the 93 team. Should be a pretty raucous atmosphere in the Smith Center this afternoon, and George and his teammates will be honored at halftime of that game. So appreciate him making some time while he was back in town. Just got done talking off the air. George is doing, as you guys probably know, watching the broadcast, George is doing analysis for the Hornets TV network now. So you probably get a chance to see him on TV as much. But if you're not used to seeing George on TV, check out the YouTube channel right now. Tommy's got us up and running, and you can see 93 team captain, or one of them. You and Montross, and was Phelps.
It was Roto.
Okay. Because Montross is next year. That's right. I forgot he was a junior that year. So right now we've got the Aussie Takeover segment where you guys ask questions. I know you guys have been dropping a lot of questions in the chat today too. We appreciate that. This segment, of course, brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt. George, did you go to Johnny T-Shirt when you were in Chapel Hill?
I stayed in Johnny T-Shirts.
Listen,
they didn't give you much as a discount as the Shrunken Head,
but you knew about Johnny T-Shirt.
I knew about it.
That's amazing.
I knew about it.
Johnny T-Shirt has been around forever, and they are big supporters of this show. If you need a UNC basketball jersey, look, we talked about the women's basketball squad earlier today because they're on a roll right now. If you want a women's basketball jersey, men's basketball jersey, Johnny T-Shirt is your spot. Hit them up on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. If you're a premium subscriber to Inside Carolina, you get the extra 10% off the top. George is talking about discounts. We got your 10% on top of their already great prices. Johnny T-Shirt right there on East Franklin. Hit them up while you're in town today for the ball game. They will take care of you. We appreciate them sponsoring this segment.
I'll be in there, so you come in there and buy a T-shirt, I'll give you an autograph.
Look at that.
No, he will buy your T-shirt.
Listen to Tommy getting the man's checkbook all strung out already. All right, Nia, hit us with some questions, please, ma'am.
All right, my first question is coming from Lyle Register. So you obviously might have gone through some scoring slumps in your career, whether it was as a Tar Heel or in the league. So Caleb Love, he's going through kind of a scoring slump right now, and he's one of the main contributors for UNC in terms of scoring. So just wanted to ask you, how did you get out of your scoring slumps during your career, and how do you think he can kind of get out of his, hopefully today?
I think what Caleb has to do is all the outside noise, if it's people, family, mom, dad, uncles telling him to shoot the ball, just play the game. He's a good enough player that the ball would find him, his scoring would go up, and he will win. And the so-called NBA guys who know NBA basketball would know that he's making the right decisions. To be a pro, they want to see you make the right decisions at the right time. And if he's taking 15 bad shots, most of the time when you get to an NBA team, you're not going to be the guy.
Right.
So you have to be a George Lynch, a Danny Green, Bullock. If you're not that top 5 pick, you have to find your role, and your role sometimes may be an asset to a team. He has to be an asset to Carolina. He's a threat when he touches the ball. That doesn't mean you have to shoot the ball every time, and it takes the pressure off of him as a player.
For sure. I can definitely agree with that. And just kind of with this game on the line, I mean, this is definitely, I would say, a necessary game winner for North Carolina. So what do you think is kind of the ideal lineup for North Carolina today? I mean, Hubert Davis has explored the kind of 3-guard lineup with Caleb Love, RJ Davis, Seth Trimble, and sometimes adding in DeMarco Dunn. So what do you think kind of lineup is the winner for today's game?
I don't think NC State can match up size-wise, so they're going to junk up the game. Mm-hmm. They're going to try to press. I think we just have to be in the right spot at the right time and make plays. Don't be hero, because, you know, the fans going to be there. You got a lot going on. The 93 team is coming in. Just play basketball, make the right play, make the simple play, and we will be successful.
George, you were on a roster with some guys. You know, you've got your name up there. A lot of guys that were on your roster in that 93 squad have their name up there. Somebody asked in the chat, Triad Midas asked, for your perspective on Armando Battaglia and his place in program history.
He's already done it. I mean, he has his name in the record books. I think you got to be National Player of the Year or captain of a national championship team. So he has to make sure that he gets the other guys to play the right way. Coach Davis and the coaching staff got they got the game plan. They got plenty of experience. Guys have been there, big games. You know, they're going to give them the game plan. He has to make sure, by him being the leader, statesman on that team, that the other guys fall in line. And if they don't fall in line, he needs to check them. And however that may be, you know, if it's a scuffle in the locker room, it's a scuffle in the locker room, and y'all tap and shake hands and get
go back
at
to
it.
practice. Yeah.
Right, go back to practice. But it's about winning. And if he wins, like you said, and he come back 30 years from now, he's in the record books. He's won a national championship. He's the captain on the championship. His jersey would be in the Raptors.
You get to come on this show?
If he win a national championship, he's probably more likely going to be National Player of the Year.
Sure.
His number going to be retired. So winning cures it all. And that's got to be his top priority going forward.
Let me ask you, you mentioned scuffles in the locker room. Were there any when you were at Carolina? I mean, you guys seemed pretty cohesive your entire time there. And then, you know, the Dogs and Stack and Sheed came after you were there. But from 90 to 93, tell us about that locker room.
So my first day on campus, I came in with Kenny Harris. A lot of people don't know about Kenny Harris. So it was me and Kenny Harris, 2 Virginia guys. He was a guard, and I was the forward. And then there was King Rice and Rick Fox. And
that's some alphas.
So King Rice and Rick Fox, man, it was crazy because Kenny broke all the records in Virginia scoring. and I was Mr. Basketball in Virginia, and we were two confident guys. But when we played pickup, King and Rick used to kick our you-know-whats for, I would say, at least the first 2 months of being on campus.
Welcome to town, rookie.
And exactly. And Kenny and I used to go back to the dorm room, and we was like, tomorrow is going to be our day.
It changes tomorrow.
Yeah, it changes tomorrow. So it fueled us every day. And then I think there was an instance in the locker room, and King had a nice background. He was a football player. Mm-hmm. But we got in, it wasn't a fight, but it was one of those, big brother, little brother, we're going to wrestle, and we're going to wrestle until someone taps out. So eventually, Kenny and I got the best of Rick and King, and then as the years went on, I had 7-footers. I had Montrose, I had Wistrom.
And I had 21 foot of white.
Yeah, and at times, those guys, Wistrom was a wild guy,
right?
And me and Wistrom had to wrestle. It was really never any punches going, but I had to let everybody know that this was my locker room because I was there. I was there when before you had Kevin Madden, Scott Williams, Rick Fox, King Rice, and you saw how those guys went about their business, and then we was short a Final Four that year. I didn't want that to happen, and I had a conversation with Coach Smith, and he was like, what would you do different? I said, well, we're going to have the toughest running program, conditioning in preseason. We're going to have a year-round weightlifting program because I knew there was guys that didn't like to get in the weight room.
Sure.
And at some point, you got to have some muscle to back that game up. And, Brian didn't like to lift. Derek was from New York. The New York City guys, they were like, man, the weight room, I don't need the weight room.
Yeah, Taylor Ripple, if you're listening, listen to him and say about New York City.
So we had to raise the bar because if it was on paper, we weren't the most talented team or most athletic team, but we had to overcompensate by being prepared, being stronger.
You could outwork them.
Yeah, and we had to have that work ethic to win the games that we won that year.
I got to get in here, and I know we're taking fan questions, but I'm seeing all these questions about the national championship team and the Final Four and all. You guys got there in 91 and then turned around and got back in 93 and finished the deal. How important was it, that 91 experience?
Oh, it was everything because you don't know what it takes until you go through that fire. And then if it had been our first experience at a Final Four and it's the hoopla, the media, you don't know how to manage your day. And then you got family calling for tickets. If you hadn't been through it, you don't know.
Right.
So I think with this year's team, because they made that run, they went through the losses, but it's a different animal now. You got NIL. They got so many more distractions.
Yeah.
The challenge for the coaching staff and the so-called leaders and captains of that team is stay the course.
Right.
And hopefully those guys can stay the course.
Now, this is my last question, and we got to do this again. I mean, we got to have you on a full show to talk about this stuff, but you're in the national championship game and it's counting down, and I wonder how much I would remember if I were actually in it, but watching it, remember everything. They inbounds the ball to Weber. He walks.
Yeah.
And everybody freaked out because he walked and they didn't call it. Did you have any doubt that he was going to wind up in that corner and you guys were going to trap him?
No, I didn't know how to, well, let's take it back. Let's go back to when we lost to him in Hawaii. They didn't have a press offense. So their weakness was they weren't organized. And whether it was discipline or coaching, whoever gets it doesn't matter. So if you go back and watch the tape when we played them in Hawaii, Jalen was always taking the ball out. And I grew up, I just reflected back on my childhood days. I had a cousin call him James Gravely. We call him Barber Brown. Barber Brown, because he used to cut all the guys' hair my junior and senior year. But he was if he's 5'10", guard, a lot of energy. I should chase him around. So I knew that I could guard 1 through 5. So I told Dirk, I said, listen, man, if Jalen takes it out, we're going to run a 2-man press, just me and you.
So you called that on the fly?
Yeah. So I told Eric, I said, Eric, you go back and protect the rim. Coach Smith kind of gave me the freedom just to.
You earned it.
He gave me the freedom to gamble because he knew if I gambled, I had a good sense that I was going to make a play. And let Salvador tell it, he said that I just couldn't stay on my man. I had to gamble. But if my teammate needed me to help him defensively, I was going to be there. That's one thing they could count on. Now, making a shot, that's questionable, but they could count on me helping defensively. So Dirk and I decided that we were just going to do a 2-man press. And it wasn't really – it was to take time off the clock.
Right.
And to wear them down.
Make it work.
I had pride in my conditioning that I was in better shape than any college player in that year, 93. So I was just going to work them and turn them. And hopefully, Dirk, being Dirk, he was going to come up with a steal. And so once Jalen took it out, they had burnt a couple timeouts before that, and then they did it again. I don't know what coach said to him in the timeout, but they didn't have a press offense. He ran up the sideline, and Coach Smith and the coaching staff, Coach Guthridge, field forward, the sidelines was our extra defenders. Once he crossed that half-court line, we knew he couldn't go back. And we just forced him up the sideline, and everybody kind of just reacted. We were up 4 or 3 or 4. Right. We were up. And if you were going to take a chance, we were already winning at that point anyway.